What's up, everybody? Belligerent here with another Bloodline video. Let's jump into it. Before we get started real quick, I'm going to throw two things at you. Two different codes. The first one that you see up at the top of your screen right now is our Discord invite code. Go ahead, come on over, join our Discord community. A lot of people want to talk to me, ask questions, stuff like that about comps, or have other questions about the game. And I kind of get questions from all over the place, which is great. I love your questions. I want to see them like I enjoy seeing them on the YouTube comments. But Discord might make it a little easier to communicate with me, to ask questions, have some conversation. So if you want to join our Discord community, take this code that you see up at the top of your screen and come on over and join us. The second code I'm dropping you is the invite code for Bloodline. If you have an account that has not yet reached stage 320, go ahead, take this account. I'm going to show you right here. Jump on over to the community tab. You see the community tab over on the left-hand side. It says GOAT ID, mail, feature preview, quests, and community. So if you tap on that community tab, then down at the bottom you see three options: community, invitation code, and rewards. We're going to hop into invitation code, and then you see the little text box there that says please enter the invitation code. So take this code that I'm giving you down here at the bottom, enter it into that invitation code, hit confirm. When you complete campaign stage 3-20, we'll both get some rewards. You'll get 100 diamonds, 10 construction contracts, and 200,000 bread for your workers in your districts. So do that, and now let's jump on into this video. All right, let's jump into this video. One of the things that makes Bloodline unique from other games in the genre, and by the genre I'm talking the champion collector games, things like Raid Shadow Legends, Stickman Awakens, Idol Heroes, Idol Champions, Idol whatever, all those types of games. The thing that Bloodline has that's different from those is the auto chest mechanic to the fight. Those other games are more RPG turn-based mechanic when it comes to the battles. Bloodline has the auto chest, and I'm not saying there's not another one out there, but it's the only one I have played that uses that mechanic over the turn-based RPG style mechanic. And that means there is an extra importance placed on the subject of our video today, which is positioning. We're going to talk about positioning. Shout out to everybody who has kind of spent time talking to me about positioning. I got a lot of good information from people. They know who they are, so thank you. I'm going to explain it a little different than the conversations I've had. I'm going to explain it a little differently than the way it was explained to me, because some of that stuff I wasn't able to prove. I'm not saying it was wrong, but I wasn't able to prove it the way it was explained to me. So I'm going to explain it the way I understand it and the way that I can prove here on the screen today. But positioning is very important. Understand, when it comes to auto chest games, things like your TFT, things like your Dota Overlords or Underlords or Underworld, whatever that thing was called, positioning is important, because once you understand how the pieces are going to respond, you can manipulate the board, and you can use tactics, and you can use different formations and kind of predict the outcome of the match. Now, some of it is RNG. There are going to be some statistics in Bloodline. We're talking about things like dodge that might avoid an attack. You're going to talk about things like, percentage chance to stun and whatever. Different RNG aspects will slightly change the outcome, sometimes drastically change the outcome. I'm sure everybody like me has run a match on Bloodline and lost, and then you run the same match again without changing everything and win. So there's a lot of RNG that goes into it. But there's a lot of things that we can influence, thereby knowing how our pieces are going to interact. And that is why positioning is so important. And so we're going to talk about kind of the basics of positioning. In the future, we might do some more videos about some advanced techniques if I feel like there's a need to get into it, if there's a lot of people looking for stuff like that. But right now, we're going to talk about basics. And when I talk about basics, I am really talking about how your front three, right, are going to kind of respond and react when the match begins. So the default behaviors for a match, okay? Now, if we look at the spots, in case you're new and you don't know exactly what I'm talking about, let me point this out before we get started, because you may not realize that I didn't notice it necessarily at first, okay? But I want you to be able to follow along in case you're very new. But we got position 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 on the board. So when I use the numbers, that's what I am referring to. The next thing to understand is that position 1 and position 3 are your front line. Okay? And then position 4 and position 5 are going to be your back line. Okay? Now the default behavior for both teams is going to be, they're going to attack across from each other. The back line also attacks across from each other. And then kind of the rogue, the random here in the 2 slot by default will go to the 1 side. Now when I talk 1 side, understand, if we split the board down the middle, this is the 1 side, this is the 3 side, and it doesn't matter, like it still operates that way even from the enemy's perspective, okay? So if we were to completely flip this around, technically 1 and 1 would be there, right? But their 2 spot does not. Their 2 spot always goes to your 1 spot. Your 2 spot always goes to your 1 spot. So that's why I'm going to refer to them as the 1 side and the 3 side. So just use that as reference to follow along. That is the default response. And let me prove this by putting 2 of the same class on the board. So everything is going to be neutral. And then I want you to watch where the enemy 2 side attacks at. Okay. If I'm correct, she's going to attack the Doombringer. And there you see the double team on the Doombringer because the Doombringer was in the 1 spot. Okay. Now, just to prove that it has nothing to do with the Doombringer, it has nothing to do with the rarity, it has nothing to do with any of that. If we play it through again, they should now double team the Orc. And there it is. You see, still double teaming the 1 spot. All right. Now, also, if we put in a 2 spot of our own, right? Oops, I'm sorry. I'm pushing the wrong thing here. Okay, our 2 spot should also double team to the 1 side because, again, on their board, everything is equal. They have a tank, so that's still equal straight across. And there you see all of the double teaming is happening to the 1 side. All right, so we have proven the theory that I'm telling you that the default is to the 1 side. All right. So here is how the reactions work as I understand them. The first thing, I guess, on the level of targeting priorities is going to be proximity, which is closer, okay? There's a couple of ways that I can show you this. Okay, so let me back up first. Proximity, but obviously the 1 spot, as we just proved, takes first priority. That's where their default is to, the 1 spot, okay? The next level of priority would be proximity, okay? Now, I can show this to you in a few different ways. All right, so if I put a range, here we go. If I put a range in my 1 spot and a melee in my 3 spot, now their 2 spot should come over here. Why? because my melee is going to move forward and thereby be closer in proximity than this ranged hero. If I am correct, that is what should happen. Okay? And there you see the double team now goes over here. Now, one thing that I want to point out, and this is why I think it's proximity. It's been explained to me a different way as far as like it being class-based, but I don't think that it's class-based in these situations except for one that I'm going to get to, and I'll tell you why. I'm going to start this again. Watch this assassin very carefully, because what she does is she is starting to do default, which is the one spot, which shows me that it doesn't have to do with class where she's targeting in this case. She is starting to go to the one spot, but as my Doombringer moves forward, the proximity targeting takes over and she actually changes her reaction. So watch this again for me. And you can see she's starting to go to the one spot, but then she changes because of the proximity and retargets the Doombringer. And you may be saying, well, that doesn't, maybe they always start that way. Okay. But they don't always start that way, because let me give you there is one class that has higher aggro than everybody, and that is tanks. Tanks are always prioritized with all things being equal. Okay? Proximity will still take precedent, but if all things are equal, tanks draw aggro. So watch this. Because I have a tank here now, you will see this assassin from the start come towards the tank, because the tank has higher priority over the other classes just from the get-go. So we shouldn't, if what I'm telling you is true, we shouldn't see this kind of movement like we saw last time. The assassin will be coming towards the tank from the start. So let's start this up here. And you see from the start, the assassin is coming towards the tank. Proximity is not a factor in this case. The assassin beelines for the tank because the tank class takes precedent over all the other classes. So even if all things were equal, and we can prove this by putting in another melee so we know the proximity stays the same. We know the proximity is not affecting the fact that the assassin is now targeting the tank. It's class-based in this example. So we'll start this up again. You see she's still already from the start making a beeline for that tank. Okay, as where, again, and I'll show you this again in case you didn't notice it or in case you didn't catch it. Watch very closely, like watch that assassin from the moment this match starts. She will start heading this direction, but then as proximity kicks in, she then changes direction, as opposed to what you just saw when she made just a beeline for a tank and did not change her reaction. You see she's starting towards the one slot, and then proximity kicks in and she comes over towards the 3 spot. Okay, so what that says to me is that the tank class has a higher aggro priority than the other classes, and then proximity kicks in some situations where you have ranged versus warrior. Okay, and we can show this a couple of different ways, right? So if we put in 2 different melee classes, so warrior, assassin, okay, she's still going to go to the 1 spot, because proximity is the same. Even though they're different classes, that doesn't change anything. There is no priority over warrior versus assassin. Let's watch. You see, again, she's going to the 1 spot, okay? Well, but maybe there's priority assassin over warrior. Let's swap them. But again, because there is no priority between assassin and warrior, and there's no difference in proximity, we again go back to the default. She is going to attack the 3 spot, or I'm sorry, the 1 spot. And you see here, again, there's no priority placed on the assassin class over the warrior class. And last time there was no priority placed on the warrior class over the assassin class. Proximity was equal, and therefore she went back to default, which was to attack the 1 slot. Okay? And so, again, we can prove this by subbing in a tank. All right? And if we play this through, we already know she's going to attack the 1 slot. Okay? Because, again, proximity is equal. Therefore, we know if proximity is equal, the default is to the 1 spot. So that doesn't necessarily prove my case about the tanks having higher aggro. But if we swap it, it will. Now watch the assassin here. And as you see, the assassin is now double teaming the tank. So we know the tanks take priority over all other classes. And we have also proved there's no priority in the other classes that we can prove, because no matter what, she was attacking the 1 spot unless it was the tank that takes priority. Okay? And then again, just to go back to the range versus melee, so the proximity factor, if I sub in a ranged character, put them in the 3 spot, again, she's just going to make a beeline to the 1 spot because A, that's her default, and B, nothing else ever triggers the proximity because it is a melee class, right? So you see she just makes a beeline to the 1 spot. All right. Never thinks about going over to the ranged spot. Okay. And again, if we swap this, you'll see what we saw earlier when we had the Doombringer in. She will start to go towards the 1 spot because that's what the default is. And then proximity takes over and goes to the 3 spot. Okay. You see there, she made that little L-shaped movement that brought her over here instead of coming straight here like she does when it's the tank class. But Belligerent, you said proximity was the highest factor. Why are you saying that when it looks to be the tank class is the highest factor? All right. Well, let's throw in a little kicker, okay? Some of you might know about our good friend, the Badger, right? So let's put a tank class here, okay? And heck, let's put a tank class in the 1 spot, right? So all things are equal. She has 2 tanks to target. So no matter what, if the tank class was priority over proximity, she could go to either 1 or 3. But because the spawning of the Huntsdorf Badger reaches them first, everybody targets the proximity trigger over the class trigger. All right, so let's watch this here. You see the Badger is up ahead, reaches everybody first. So literally all 3 of them are attacking the Badger. We'll do that one more time. They all gather to the Badger because the Badger procs the proximity reaction as opposed to the class reaction. So let's watch it again. And you see they all target the Badger. It doesn't live very long, so we don't get a lot of time to process what they're targeting. But hopefully you saw that it targets the Badger because the Badger triggers proximity. So proximity is first. If proximity is even, tank takes priority. The tank class takes aggro. If there is no tank class and proximity is even, the 1 side takes priority. Okay? So proximity, tank, 1 side. All right. Hopefully you understand that and how you can use that to manipulate the board. Okay? So if you want to, let's say in this situation, right? If we want to blow up this side first, which is a good part of the front line to blow up first. Why? Because the Lionheart gives shielding to the whole team, whereas the Orc tank doesn't really add anything to the whole team. She's tanky, she has a stun, but she doesn't give any buffs to her team. So it makes sense to blow up the Lionheart first. Okay? And because the Lionheart is on the one side, we can get our 2 spot to go to the one side. Alright? But by using either the proximity or the tank class, we can force the assassin over here, thereby giving us actually a 1, 2, 3 on 1 while they're dilly-dallying around over here. Okay? So if we do this, all right, correctly, these two should come attack our tank, leaving... These two should attack our tank, leaving all of our DPS to wipe out this Lionheart very quickly. Let's play this through, see how it reacts. Okay, we have the double team here, and we have 1, 2, 3 targeting the Lionheart here. So we can use that targeting priority to take out a specific target if we want to. Okay, now there are going to be some things where you can't do that, right? There's going to be some times where you can't necessarily change that targeting. If, for example, they had a warrior here, I can't get the 2 to ignore the tank, right? The 2 is going to always go to the tank side if this right here was a warrior. And remember, because remember, the tank class takes the priority, but because these are equal, we can do that. Now, one more thing to add in. There is a wild card to this, okay? And I can't do it necessarily in this situation, but I can demonstrate to you what I'm talking about, okay? And the wild card, and the reason why everybody should have one of these built up to a high level, because they are one of the top tier because of this, okay? Male Sallyhorn brings in another element because we can actually change the proximity. Okay? So right now these are equal. Okay? But if I move Sally over here, y'all know what he does, right? He just rams the one across from him into the back. So I can actually make my 2 target the 3 side instead of the 1 side. Actually, what's going to happen, because they have this melee in the middle, the 2 will actually target the 2 because of the proximity. All right. But just to prove our point, let's back up a little bit here. All right. And let's refresh. If I use this same formation, my 2 side is going to help the 1 side. Let's just reprove that. Okay. My Doombringer going over to the 1 side. We got that. Hopefully you already knew that was going to happen. But now, if I put in M. Sally, I can actually move the proximity of the tank. Remember, proximity takes priority over tank class. Tank class takes priority when proximity is equal. But my Sally is going to make sure that the proximity is not equal, thereby causing the Doom to target proximity, which in this case will be the assassin because of the way it positions itself. If you had a ranged here, sometimes you'll come into like a Fulgur or a Lux here in the 2 spot. They actually hang back a little further, so proximity would kick in and your Doombringer would actually go all the way over to the 3 spot. But let's watch and see how Sally can change the proximity, thereby giving us the ability to change our target, even though technically class is the same, proximity is the same. Thereby, by all the rules, our 2 slot should target the 1 side, but M. Sally is going to change that proximity. Therefore, the proximity rule is no longer equal. Therefore, our 2 spot will not target the 1 slot. Let's watch how this works here. Okay, so you see Sally changes the target, and now, like I said, you have the Doombringer targeting proximity, which was the assassin. Okay, let's watch that again. I'm actually going to sub in somebody who doesn't do quite as much damage so we can see how that works, and then maybe get a feel for how all of that happens. All right, so you see right there, the likeness changed position, okay? And then proximity takes over. All right. So we have some wild cards that can change proximity. All right. One other wild card that you can bring into this is the male Tide. Okay. He's actually your best way to get to the back line because his active drags the spot that is the champion that is furthest from him up. Okay. So he drags them up. When he drags them, he actually also retargets to that target that he dragged forward. But what that else is going to do is change the proximity for your other champions. However, just understand, once they have targeted spot 1, they're not going to stop targeting spot 1 until something breaks that target, such as spot 1 dying or spot 1 being moved, such as an M. Sally. But what that does is it changes who they will target next when Tide actually drags them forward. So let's see if we can demonstrate this here. So on his third shot, Tide actually drags him forward, and then you see Tide is still targeting the backline hero that he dragged forward. So that's a way, and that's also why I consider M. Tide, and many people consider M. Tide as a top tier champion, because of the way that you can target. Now understand, he targets the champion furthest away from him, which in this case is him. If I move him over here, that changes to this one. So you can use him to target that backline. A couple of things mess that up, like male Fulgur, because male Fulgur doesn't stay back as far as other classes. His range is actually shorter, so male Fulgur will come forward, and M. Tide will target the other backline champion, no matter what, if it's a Fulgur. But you're seeing some of these basics. I'm starting to dive a little bit more into the advanced stuff, but I hope that this positioning guide gives you a better understanding of how you can tactically and strategically manipulate what is going to happen to start your battle, what is going to cause your champions to target specific champions, thereby allowing you to identify important targets and understand how to get your champions to target those champions. So just to recap briefly, the targeting priority is proximity, then tank class, okay? If all things are equal, it's the 1 side over the 3 side, at least to start the battle. All right? So if you got questions or whatever, hit me up in the comments. Feel free to join our Discord. Like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think. Tell a friend. I am Belligerent. Peace.